Welcome to the Church Universal series, where we seek to tell the often untold story of the many apostolates in the Catholic Church which are making a positive difference in the world through their charitable works and prayerful lives. Who has the greatest influence in young people's lives regarding the choices they make? Our guests today say that studies clearly show that it is their parents. We will be talking today about family honor, which is helping parents in their irreplaceable role of guiding their children. Brenda Cherkas is the Executive Director of Family Honor, and Vincent Weaver is the Director of Family Honors Programs and Training. Welcome once again to both of you.
Thank you, Father. It's good to be here.
So Brenda, for those who missed the first episode, tell us a little bit about Family Honor.
Well, Family Honor has been around about 30 years or so, and our primary mission is that we provide a Catholic framework on the truth and meaning of sexuality, love, and family. There is so much confusion out there right now, Father, as we know, in the world on the issue of sexuality in particular. And so little is talked about in the area of virtue and chastity, that we are trying not only to talk about those things, but to equip parents in particular with the tools and the encouragement and the knowledge they need to be able to fill their young people up, their children, almost regardless of whatever age, with these good things, because as we were talking about before, those young people will be filled up with something.
Yes.
And really it needs to be to lead the happiest kind of life. It needs to be filled up with goodness and virtue and truth, because we have ample examples actually of people that have really are the walking wounded, that maybe made some choices that they regret in those areas, the choices that can have long-term and lasting effects. So it's all about getting parents equipped and strengthening that parent-child relationship.
And I would guess that you hear many times, I wish somebody would have told me about this when I was a teen, when I was young.
Those are the exact words. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you how many times we hear that very phrase from parents who have been through one of our parent-child programs that literally they look at us and say, if only you would have been around when I was growing up, I probably would have made some different choices. And it just tears at your heart because it's said with such a sense of regret and loss, and some of those choices can't be undone. So, you know, there's a lot of walking wounded in the world today, and a lot of the walking wounded, it's because of the choices they made in the area of sexuality. So, what we're about again is bringing the truth and bringing it in a joyful way as well to young people and their parents. But again, always with the eye to empowering those parents.
Yes. So Vincent, you say that it's family-centered. What does that mean, that it's family-centered?
Yes, I mean, as opposed to this being a subject like math that you're just teaching in a classroom, this is designed to put the parents in the primary role as educators of their kids, especially in these areas. So we never do a program without the parents there, at least one of the parents there. Ultimately, we are trying to keep the teens or the preteens engaged in the program, but really we are pitching this message to the parents to let them know you can do this, and here are some tools and some strategies to carry that out. And they walk away from the programs realizing, I think I can do this.
Now, I would guess that children need some sort of formation, but then those who are middle school and those who are older all kind of need their own kind of program. Is that something that you provide for?
Yes, we have a whole cadre of programs for that very reason. We have Leading and Loving, which is designed for parents only of parents of young kids, basically newborn up through about 5th grade. And in that, we introduce them to the theology of the body. We talk about how can you answer a very young child's questions about their bodies and about how they are made, and put that in the context of God fearfully and wonderfully making you, and what an awesome thing this is. Then we go on to introduce them to the 4 cardinal virtues, as well as chastity, and how chastity is a natural extension of those 4 cardinal virtues. And then we get into one of my favorite subjects, and after we've discussed the meaning of real love and how Jesus demonstrated that through his life, death, and resurrection, objectively evaluating sexual behaviors we see out there in our society to know, is this real love or is this some false imitation of that? And we give parents a chance to role play. How would I respond to these questions or these situations? And when parents are doing that, even as parents of very young kids, this becomes something that just becomes a natural extension of how they parent. It becomes a fundamental part of how they parent. And then beyond leading and loving, we have changes and challenges, which is for parents of sixth graders and their sixth graders. As my wife describes this as a nice, sweet appetizer for introducing fertility appreciation and total person sexuality. And it gets the door open for those conversations that the kids are just starting to become pretty curious about, asking questions about their bodies at that middle school level. Then we have Real Love and Real Life, which is our most commonly requested. It's a retreat format for parents and their eighth graders.
Okay.
And there we get into a lot of these other subjects. We build on that fertility appreciation. We talk more about total person sexuality, not just with the students, but with the parents as well. And as we were discussing before, dating and what does it mean to lead up to marriage, and what do real friendships, what are those all about, and good communication. And then finally we have Staying Connected, which is a shorter workshop format for parents. It's parents only for parents of high schoolers. And in that, it's kind of a baptism by fire approach. It's a nice follow-up to any of the other programs, but it's also a great standalone experience where parents can say, okay, I might be kind of panicking now, so what do I do? And we give them some tools in a fairly short period of time to reflect on how would I deal with a lot of these situations. And makes them feel more competent and capable of going out there and actually doing this work.
Well, let's talk about that eighth grade program weekend that you talked about. What would that format look like when someone goes for a weekend?
Sure. For the Real Love and Real Life, it's the parents and typically eighth graders. We sometimes have seventh graders, sometimes have ninth graders there as well. And we break the ice and make sure that this is a fun, interactive format. There's skits, there are games along the way where we really get the parents and the teens involved. And they, not only do we present these topics that I just went through a minute ago, but we also give them some worksheets and some conversations to kickstart. How would I discuss this? Let's talk about what I as a parent can offer an understanding for you as my teen. And it gives parents a chance to really become students of their teens and learn some things about them that they may have never realized before. In fact, we have frequently had some subjects touched on in those retreat settings that parents were just not aware of, but now they have not only awareness of the subject, but a means of communicating in a productive fashion about that, where the roof doesn't explode with anger and that type of thing. It's a very constructive way of addressing these things. So it's a beautiful growth opportunity for parents and their teens.
Now, do you find that teens are like opposed to the whole weekend and they're just kind of not really wanting to hear what you are talking about, or do you find that they're very receptive and really they find this helpful?
I think a lot of times it starts out with the famous posture is,
Yes.
and that's for the first few minutes of the program. But usually, typically, Father, within I would say very early into the first session of the program, the whole body language changes, the whole posture changes, and both the teens and the parents realize quickly, okay, there's something in this for me. This really could help me talk better with my parents. And so the body posture relaxes. And I've sat in on a lot of, I'm not one of the parent-child presenter folks, but I've sat in on a lot of programs and I observe. And you see a lot more than of the arms going around, the parents' arms going around the child, the heads being put together. And it is stunning, just along the lines of what you were just talking about, even for parents that feel like, I already have a pretty good relationship with my child. I think it surprises them sometimes what results after this program. As one of the parents, I'll never forget her comment, a parent that went through our program a few years ago, she said, going through the Family Honor program, it opened a door that I didn't even realize was closed. you know?
Right.
And she had really good relationships with her children, with this particular child that went through the program with her. So it just, you know, it pushes that door open even a little bit more. And maybe you talk a lot with your child and you talk about a whole range of things, but maybe you haven't been talking as specifically about, again, chastity, virtue,
Right.
some of these types of things.
I would guess the young guys too, and their fathers, that this has to open up a whole new bond between father and son and talking about these real issues that young men are facing, right?
Right. And one of my favorite things is when we do the fertility appreciation presentation, for modesty's sake, we separate the mothers and the daughters from the dads and the sons. And I, as a father of 5 daughters, I really like doing the part where we talk about the female reproductive system. And it's funny, the looks on the dads' faces, because I can tell they are learning a lot of this for the first time. They never really understood some of these
Right.
things and the way this is presented. And there is a great opportunity there where now the dad says, okay, now I get why that is the way that it is, and I can
Right.
talk to my son about this. And the sons that are in there with their moms in the other room, they now know that, okay, mom knows that I know that she knows, so now we can have this conversation. But I especially love seeing the dads realize this is not women's work. This is something that it's really important that I take the lead on this. And now I have a sense of how to go about doing that.
Do you cover other topics besides sexuality and talking about just family relationships and those sorts of issues?
We do. I think that a lot of people tend to use shorthand and say, well, they do sex education or they do chastity education. And that's really only a slice of the pie. Relationships are bigger than that. Life is bigger than that.
Right.
So we talk about, as a matter of fact, in the first session of the first program of the Real Love and Real Life program, the one that Vincent was saying is kind of the most requested one, we start out by talking, what is good communication? What does this look like in a family? What does this look like in practical terms? And we
Right.
do, again, role play for this, the different types of communication to have depending on what needs to be
Good and
communicated.
bad, right?
Good and bad,
You have
yes.
skits for both of
Yes,
those?
we do.
Yes.
So we talk about that. We talk about peer pressure. We talk about the role of the father in the family. We do talk about theology of the body and again, helping parents to try and understand that part of their role, part of their very, very important role is helping their young person, their son or daughter, answer those big questions. Who am I? And what is my life for? That is so foundational for moving into young adulthood and moving into a happy and well-adjusted adulthood.
Right.
So yeah, the scope is bigger than just certainly anatomy and physiology or even just talking about chastity as a virtue. We incorporate a lot of other really appropriate and needed things in there.
Along the lines of what she's saying, one of my favorite comments was a young lady, a teen in a program in Pennsylvania, and she had already gone through a health class discussion about sex education. And at the end of the program, she literally elbowed one of her parents and said, now this is the way this ought to be talked about. And for a 13-year-old girl to realize there's so much more here than what I had heard in school. That was just awesome.
Yeah.
You have some new initiatives as well besides these programs?
We do. And again, what Family Honor has always historically been known for are our family-centered chastity programs. But what we have realized in particular ways in the last few years, as the culture has gotten more and more aggressive on multiple levels and on multiple topics, we thought, there is a growing need out there to talk to parents maybe more one-on-one and to talk to ministry leaders and maybe provide some continuing education on a number of the topics that really aren't being talked about. And so we've developed some new initiatives. One is our Be Not Afraid seminar. We do a half-day seminar called Be Not Afraid, Responding to Sexual Chaos with Truth and Love.
Yes.
And typically the format for that is Vincent opens up and gives a little bit of the history of kind of trying to help give an explanation of how did we get where we are today. So he talks about the mother and father of sexual chaos and a lot of what they have spawned, and it's tragic, really. I come in after that and usually talk about this whole idea that seems to be taking root and growing in our culture, transgender.
Yes.
And typically I would do a presentation on understanding the push for gender surrender, that basically a lot of where the culture is right now is that you're just supposed to accept this. You're not supposed to push back, you're not supposed to say anything, you're supposed to accept that the fallacy that there are more than two genders, and not only accept it, but promote it, embrace it, and articulate it.
Yes.
And in some cases, start your child on that path if they indicate to you that is something that they want to do. And there is just such a huge amount of misinformation out there on the whole idea of gender. You could almost do a full-day seminar on that.
Sure.
So we talk about that, and then as we wind up the half-day seminar, typically we have, whatever parish we're doing this in, we would invite the pastor or parochial vicar to come and do a talk on a pastoral approach. How do we respond as Catholics to just really this confusion that's going on out there? What is our faith response? And then we do a panel discussion. So we've done that. We've actually got one coming up in South Carolina soon. Then we have a more full-blown, so to speak, weekend in talking about some of these issues with our weekend course called Understanding the Human Person. And typically this is for folks that really want to go a lot deeper. We have a combination of ministry leaders that come to these seminars, and parents and other even single adults that just want to know more. We talk about theology of the body. We do talk about the whole gender issue. We talk about fertility appreciation. We have a significant component on the family and age appropriateness of different stages of development of children, and how to talk about certain things with them, et cetera. So it's a very, very full, meaty weekend, and we typically also have some time for spiritual reflection in there. At one of the recent ones we did, during one of our breaks, we went down to a little chapel and said the Divine Mercy Chaplet, because we can never forget, it's that combination of information, but we always have to bring God into this and point towards God. The solutions point towards God.
And one of the things along with that too that we've started bringing up is the impact of social media and managing that and technology, and how does that fit into all of this. And it's just another factor. It's not so much that it is, well, it has changed the equation to a large degree, but it's just another opportunity for parents to remember you still have the greatest influence even over these things that are ubiquitous in our society, like smartphones.
What would be the biggest concerns parents have? I guess we've talked about some of these things already, but what would you see as the biggest concerns?
Brenda mentioned a lot of the topics
Right.
of relating to sexual morality, including transgenderism, homosexuality, contraception. But I think, honestly, the biggest concern for most parents is just the hesitation to have this conversation in the first place. And am I really the one to be doing this? And am I alone? When you get in a room full of a lot of other parents who are there asking those same questions and having some of those same concerns, and they realize they're not alone, that's really eye-opening. And then as a presenter, to bounce around the country and see this is taking place all over, and there are people still trying to raise their kids with these traditional values, understanding the wisdom of Catholic Church teachings. That is just incredibly empowering, and I know how much that's impacted my life.
I think you made an important point, before the show when we were talking. There's too much silence,
Yes,
right? There's too
yes.
much silence. So talk about that, how parents really need to be proactive, involved with their children's lives.
Absolutely, and part of that parent influence is it's something that really hit me in a profound way, that if I don't actually say what I believe and the values that I want to pass along to my kids, I have to actually say that. And I know that sounds like a really naive, basic point, but too often parents don't do that. And they either find that they don't have the right opportunity to do so, or they're afraid to, and they're worried about the pushback they're going to get, even from their own child. But even if the child's pushing back, even if it's a 16 or 17 or 18-year-old, they still have a hunger to have their parents speak out about this, because they are wired to rely on their parent or parents as the authority on this. And too often parents abdicate that authority. We'll go ahead and let social media or their peers or their school take over, and it's just not that way.
So don't be afraid that there's going to be some pushback, because that's part of their own growing in independence and
Right.
taking, responsibility for their life. That's going to be part of it, but they still need to hear the truth, right? Because there's the opposite message just continually being promulgated.
It's true, and in the context not only of chastity education and talking about sexuality, but also in the larger context of faith, that research shows, and of course our faith teaches that parents really need to be the primary educators of their young people in matters of faith and morals. But it's really quite mind-boggling when you have just regular research that's coming out and time again saying that yes, parents are where it's at. And then when you have research that's been done on Catholic youth, and that
Yes.
research says, the best formators of their children that are going to have the longest lasting effect are the parents. Your
Yes.
kids are going to mirror you. They're going to be like little mirrors. And so they're watching what you're doing, what you're saying, but also what you're doing. And so it's just critical for parents to engage in these conversations and live out what they're talking about as well.
Now, people who may be watching this program, maybe they don't have family honor in their area. How can they benefit? Is this something for a wider audience than just the parish?
It is, and we're able to reach people now in a variety of ways. One of the things that we have started doing are webinars. Certainly, we have an online course so that really no matter where you are in the world, you can take
Okay.
our course. And we actually have had people over the years we've had somebody from South Africa, from the West Indies, from Italy, from Brazil, from quite a number of people actually from Canada have taken our course, and people from all over the country. So we have webinars, we have the course. One of the other ways that we're reaching out as well, Father, is there in most of our states and most of our dioceses, there are growing Hispanic populations. And so one of the things that we have done is translate some of our resources into Spanish. And we've also done some of our programs in Spanish, sometimes using translation equipment. Right now, we're in the process of recruiting and training bilingual presenters as well. So again, we can reach as many people as possible.
And how can they find that information? What is the contact information?
Sure. The easiest way, the jumping off point, is to go to our website, familyhonor.org, and we have a number of different tabs on the homepage that folks can click on, our programs, training, resources, because we also have books and other materials that people, even if they never get to one of our programs, we have a book called Our Power to Love, and it's a very basic age-appropriate explanation of the theology of the body. And again, a couple of those resources are in Spanish as well.
Wonderful, wonderful. Vincent, as we're coming to the close of this program, any closing thoughts or any stories of people who've benefited from this program? Yourself, maybe?
Yeah, I would definitely start by looking in the mirror on that one. As I said, this has been a fundamental part of how I have carried out my role as a dad. But over and over again, we keep seeing young people. In some cases, went through one of our retreats or programs as maybe a 7th or an 8th grader, and now they are raising families of their own. Some of them have actually come back as adult presenters with us, along with their families being involved, and they just keep saying, I'm so glad that this was a part of my life growing up. I'm so glad that my parents brought me to this and that we started having these conversations, because I don't know where we would have been otherwise. And that was a big encouragement for me, because I was seeing some of the founders of Family Honor when I got involved around 2002, and I was seeing their kids now grown up, and even some of their kids getting to that stage, and saying, you know what, this is not an isolated situation. This is not a pipe dream to grow up in virtue and wait and find someone who shares those same values, so that we can raise a family really on God's terms and for what He had in
And you
mind.
think your
This is
wife
not a lost idea.
Your wife and 5 daughters would agree with you?
I would hope so. I would hope so. But she and I have both grown so much in our faith because of Family Honor, and I'm just very grateful and blessed by that.
Well, Brenda, in 1 minute, any closing thoughts on your part?
Well, just that we really ask people to to be proactive, to get involved, to not let the culture fill your kids up
Yes.
with the false messages, to find the truth, to bring the truth to your family. And if Family Honor can help, that is what we're here for. Don't wait. This is too critical. Be involved, be prayerful. There's a lot of different kinds of roles for folks in Family Honor, and we would love to talk with anybody that's interested in this or wants more information.
I'm so glad that Bishop Baker recommended your group. And
So are we.
I'd had an earlier program, and he said, you may want to look into Family Honor. So I'm so delighted to learn more about this wonderful work that you're doing.
Thank you, Father.
Thank you, Father.
As parents, are you proactive in guiding your children and young people in making the best choices in their lives regarding love, sexuality, and family? Perhaps Family Honor is a way for you to have the resources that you need to do this well and with confidence. We will see you again this time next week for another episode of The Church Universal.